Evening, everyone. Back again,
Evening, all.
number 11, with
How you
4
doing?
people this time.
Ooh.
We're doing good, Joe. We've
I
dragged
know.
the old man back out of recluseness.
What have you been up to, Ricky?
At the office, mate. I've been hiding up at Fish Farm, haven't I? So yeah, busy time of year, isn't it? Been getting stuck into it all, making sure all them fish are going well. Working hard, spending some time with Matt, bringing him on. We just launched our new pond manager system as well, which did a nice little video on today. So yeah, plenty happening, mate, as always. But thought I'd show my face.
Brill. Crafty, what you been up to, mate?
Lee's been missing me, haven't you, mate?
I've been cooking in the sun, mate. That's what I've been doing. I tell you, bit of shopping. Got a good load of fish coming tomorrow, Ricker.
Yeah, I cannot wait for another 4 o'clock start tomorrow to pack your fish. After you already ruined my Saturday.
Well, what are friends for, mate? You know?
How are you doing, Lee? What have you been up to? Been bowling a couple of fish again?
Yeah, mate. Do you know what I mean? Just bowling a couple of fish. I've had the afternoon off. So I've been working on the motorbike, sweating my peduncle off, and bowling some fish to try to get them to perform for me. Looking quite good.
Happy days.
The videos. Yeah, so I've just come from the barbecue and burnt all my chicken wings, so I'm in an awful mood. Yeah, they all set on fire, so I'm bloody starving. That's my update. So tonight, guys, we had Alan who wanted to discuss a bit of a different topic tonight, and Alan's, I think, he's a bit late with work, but he's submitted his questions to us on YouTube, so we'll go through them to begin with. But topic tonight is the Toesai dream. Something I think you've covered in your podcast with Chris about, what can people expect with Toesai, Ricky. But I suppose sum up Toesai dream. What's the first thing that pops in your head when you think of that?
Well, first thing I need to say is obviously clearly Alan wanted to cover this topic and ask the questions because he knows absolutely fuck all about it. So he didn't even want to show his face as well. I mean, it's just shocking, isn't it? It really is. So that'll hopefully wind him right up. Can't wait for the replies.
After Geordie.
I was told his Zimmer frame got stuck in the mud.
It's even better when he's not here to try and even remotely defend himself a little bit. There we go. Yeah, Toesai dream. I mean, it is. I think it's probably the biggest dream in koi, to be honest with you. I think it's the part just about everybody. I don't think anybody doesn't enjoy raising Toesai. Even if it's not, it depends what the dream is. The dream of raising Toesai can be very different. Do you just want to raise one through to a nice Nisai and have some success? Are you looking to raise one and win Grand Champion in Japan at the Old Japan Show, having selected that fish as a Toesai, maybe not actually raised it hands-on, but selected it? It is, it's awesome. It's a fascinating journey. I think it's one that, captivates everybody. But it is also one where I think there's a line you need to learn to draw in the sand with it, because it can become costly, it can become frustrating, and lead you down quite a dark path, in all honesty, if you get on the wrong kind of road with it. By that, I mean the style of fish and the sort of value of fish that you're buying, because I think the whole culture of big, expensive jumbo Toesai, for me, that ship's long sailed. And I think for a lot of hobbyists, it long sailed a while ago, to be honest with you, because there are just simply too many variables dealing with the batches of fish I'm dealing. I mean, basically, the Toesai dream is it's what koi wholesale does. It's finding those batches of fish. It's learning that the Toesai dream is a numbers game. I think I've said that time and time again. If you're playing that game, you've got to learn it is all about numbers. You can't just buy 1 or 2 Toesai and expect both to go really well. That's not going to happen. And even at that, to have a 50% success rate, it's not going to happen. We've got Shinoda Heelsoras that I think I mentioned them a few times last year that I was growing on. And, we had 1,000 fish in, and I currently have 8 swimming around in a pond that are growing through to Sansai this year. 7 females and 1 male. It tells you all, you need to know, really. But you know, there's a lot of things you can accept. I think there's a few bits I've touched on, like Dainichi. The Dainichi project has been a steep learning curve for me with this. I think we've got the element of the Toesai dream and chasing the female fish, ultimately trying to find a Nisai that where you're basically trying to beat the breeder in them games. You're hoping it all goes to plan, but this whole female thing, you know, they're so far off. I think breeders, the big farms, can get it about 70% right. But so in every 10 fish, 3 are for sure going to become male fish. So if that's the part, and they kind of use that and hide behind that in order to put that extra premium on the fish. Certainly when they're auctions, they know they'll get people bidding higher, and that stuff can become really, really frustrating. And I've seen it obviously with the Dainichi fish, as I've mentioned, and this is kind of the point I'll just end on for now, is that is where I followed that jumbo Toesai dream, went absolutely balls deep on these fish, paying top sums of money for these super high potential Toesai. And if it wasn't for the fact of the numbers, me understanding the numbers game, and then going that far, that I had so many fish, it was like a self-insurance policy where, you know, in the end, hopefully I come out at the very least break even, certainly looking at commercially, because fish that I paid thousands of pounds for amongst that batch went to shit after a few months, despite showing all the promise, absolutely everything, they go to shit. And that's what Toesai do. With every bit of experience I have got when I'm selecting, there are criteria that you just can't see it coming, and it gets frustrating. So that's my take on that one.
All right, then we'll move around the clock. So Crafty next then. What's your epitome of a Toesai dream?
As someone that don't show and won't show, the Toesai dream for me is being able to select the best quality fish that you can from young. And like this year, what I'm doing is buying Toesai, nice young Toesai, putting them in the pond, and then actually watching them grow. So what I would like to do is learn from my Toesai rather than chase a dream. At this point, I haven't got a dream with regards to the Toesai, but what you are doing is learning and developing, from all the different Toesai that I've got in my own pond, but also learning from some of the Toesai down in the shop as well, because believe it or not, they change quickly. You know, you can see what's good, what's not so good in a relatively short period of time. So, but I see it from other people's like mentality to be able to buy that dream fish from from Toesai to then take it through to baby, junior, adult, etc. in shows. You know, what a legacy that would be if you could achieve it. You know. Not only for the fish, but also the person that's managed to achieve it.
And then moving on, Lee, what do you reckon?
Oh man,
can I just stop him? We can't take Lee's opinion because he's the jammiest fecker I've ever met. I mean, it all just goes so plain sailing. He's just going to make it seem like it is. Everyone can go out, spend 500 quid, and get a show winner.
Yeah, no, I truly believe it's the Toesai learning curve, man. It's like, I love it. I've been really lucky, but the fish that I've bought I've selected a lot of fish myself, and I think I can select an all right fish now, and they do turn out okay, some better than others, but my real pinnacles of the Toesai dream have been suggested quite strongly by mostly your brother, Ricky. You need that one, pal. Yes, it's 1,600 quid, but it's bloody gorgeous. And, well, yeah, they are. Do you know what I mean? So I think if you're new into the hobby, I think it's real fun raising Toesai, and it's a massive learning curve. And you can learn so much from how split fins heal up, how the Benny contracts and gets thick or disappears, the Saroji. There's so much to learn, and that first 12 months of a Toesai's life is a real rapid changing period, and I think that's the dream about it, and I love that. And you know, one in a million, you know, you hit the jackpot. you know, if you do it yourself. But if you ask Ryan, then it's pretty much 1 in 1. You can get it right.
Suppose you
That's
got
why
to
I
have
go to Japan with Ryan, not on my own.
yeah. Suppose you got to have a lot of trust in the dealer you're working with. You know, if they've
You
got
do.
experience around the genetics of the farms they're buying from and that kind of stuff, and understanding as well. So I guess that's a good point as well. So shall we move into some selection questions that Alan set us then?
Yeah, fire on in.
How important?
I just want to go in just on that, just to kind of add, you know, I think with the Toesai thing, it's putting some boundaries in place. Not so much calling it the Toesai dream, the joy of raising Toesai. If you think you're going to be beating a breeder, if you're at the realms where you've got a big budget and you're spending it, you've got a healthy budget. You know, if you're spending 1.5, 2 grand on a Toesai all the time, it's just not going to work. Trust me, that you'll get one probably out of 10, 15, 20 over the years that you do genuinely beat the breeder on. Because it's not forgetting, if the potential's really there, the breeder sees it as well. And if they're prepared to sell that fish at that point, what they often do is just price it as a Nisai anyway. Or they hedge their bets. You know, they think best case it could be worth this. Right now it's worth that. Let me put it somewhere in the middle and see what happens. Or even worse cases, they just think, well, that could be worth double this next year. I'm going to quote that. So you never actually truly beat them at that game. Very, very rare it happens. And it's, you say, with all that risk, all that frustration, you know, you invest 6 to 12 months in this period of that fish growing for all that to go wrong. Where what you can do is, when you're at that level, if you're buying Nisai, that's when all of a sudden things change, because, you know, you buy the Nisai that you're going a bit heavier on to begin with, but you reduce all that risk. So over, say, a 5-year time span of you doing this, you're going to be much, much better off, because success rate for Nisai, when you know what you're looking at, is substantially higher. And you've got that unpredictable kind of 12-month period out of the way. I think learning the skills to select small Toesai come in really well when you haven't got that big budget to work with, because the potential is in them fish. You know, a lot of fish breeders let go. The Dainichi fish that I'm raising at the minute are proving this already. That was a batch that's released by Dainichi at the earliest possible time. You know, and a lot of these fish making their way out to shops have got in serious potential. You've got to remember, even that same thing has the same genetic pool as a fish that might sell from that parent set for hundreds of thousands of pounds. The genetics are the same. If you can learn to wean through the qualities and understand the potential, that's where you're really going to win at this game. And learning them skills, that's when you start winning. But what you can do all of a sudden is be buying, you know, if you've got £1,000 budget, rather than going all in on that 1 or that 2, break it down into 5 or 10. Do what you can, raise them. But what you can also do with this as a side of your hobby, it can almost become self-financing. Because, you know, if you've got a grow on pond, you stick a batch of, say, 10, 20 fish in there, you know, with the aim, if your mindset is, I want to get 1 fish out of these, you then raise those fish over the summer. And hopefully, if you've selected well, like I think like Lee's probably doing, he can vouch for this, you're going to have some fish there that you can then sell on. Possibly, you know, if you even pricing them fairly, you possibly even make a few quid. But at the very least, what you might probably do is recover the cash you've invested in the 20, and then you've got your 1 that you add to your main collection. I mean, that for me is a fascinating side of the hobby, because I see a lot of people end up getting trapped where all of a sudden it becomes about buying the 1 fish per year, because that's where they've got, and there's so much is then placed on that process. For me, it would kill it. It would kill the enjoyment, because buying new fish, that challenge of trying to raise something from small through to it being a real collection piece is amazing. But I think, you know, if that's the case, having a grow on pond is another great option, because you need to keep learning and refining your eye. And the best way to do that is with Toesai. And you can obviously add this other dimension and then build a collection of fish that looks tasty. You know, you've refined it, you've done it, but it's not cost you the earth. It could almost become self-financing. And that, to me, is a side of the hobby I don't think you can overlook.
I guess whilst we're speaking of, you know, training your eye, you can probably give us some tips on, you know, stuff like this. So with like the comment from Alan in terms of, you know, how to pick them, you know, let's kind of go with this one. How important of certain attributes of the fish, like the height of the backbone. If we're talking about growing something large, how important would you measure from the head to the first ray of the dorsal?
Yeah, I mean, height of backbone is just kind of everything. I think I've drummed on about enough. If you've watched my videos, this is kind of I almost get sick of saying it myself over and over and over and over again. But I just think it's so important to get drummed in there. This backbone and head is all about bone structure, not necessarily body. I separate the two. Bone structure is set; it never changes. All it does is grow, but the proportions stay the same. Body shape does change. Body shape is fat, it's muscle, it's everything there, and you can manipulate that a little bit more around the bone structure that you've got sat. But yeah, it's everything. If you've not got the height in the body and the strength of the backbone, the biggest thing that happens is that needs to be there. And this is only really in big fish. I think that's important to get when this conversation comes in. That's super important when you're trying to look at raising jumbo fish, because they end up carrying so much weight. The backbone's got to carry it. And I have seen fish where the backbone has just collapsed under the weight, and you kind of get that banana shape going the wrong direction. Not very pleasant. So
it's funny you say that, Rick, because I was talking to somebody else, and they said that when they've selected their fish out and it's got big, they almost look for that downward curve on a big fish where it looks to me totally unsightly, where it's not carrying its weight properly. And I don't know where.
I think you need to say that again. Did I understand that right? They were looking for that.
Yeah, so as that fish gets big, they look for that curvature to actually go the opposite way rather than this way, go like a banana. And I was like, but that fish is too big for its own bone structure, and it's literally falling in on itself, in my opinion. It's not something that looks pretty as it swims through the water.
That wasn't you asking for one of them banana-shaped fish, Lee, was it?
Good night, Yaz. Good night, Wolf. They've just texted me. We're watching your live, but we're knackered. We're going to sleep.
Yeah, you got a comment here from Yaz.
Such a beautiful kitchen. Yeah.
Yeah, I think body shape for me is quite a big one. I guess the length from the head to the dorsal. Any comments on that? Do you see it as a?
Yeah, it's not. I mean, looking from head to dorsal is going to throw you a little bit. I like to break it down into sections a little bit. But the biggest part you can pay attention to is the head, because it's the real anchor point of everything that's going to come from it. And I think a lot of us have possibly seen big chagoys where they look like there's no head. It looks like it was a little afterthought and they stuck a little nubbin or something on the end. It's not nice to see. So that's that anchor point. If the head's not right, you can still have the rest of the characteristics behind it, the big backbone, that capability for it to carry the body, but you'll have this small head sat on the front, and then just proportionately, it will never look right.
Yeah, so I guess that feeds into the comment that Alan made here. You got Lee, Crafty, head size. Is that something you guys are paying, a lot of thought about?
Shall I go first?
Go on.
Well, I like head. Shapes, mostly. But the Tucano event was a perfect example with is it Matsunoski lineage and the Sakai lineage, and the two of them?
Sakai Marido.
Head shapes. Is it Matsunoski or was it?
Sakai Marido.
Marido. Okay. So Alan was explaining to me that probably the traits of the different head sizes comes from the traits of the bloodline. Do you know what I mean? And personally, I prefer a rounder head. I've always had better results with that, because some toes have got quite sharp, pointy faces, haven't they? I try to steer away from that. Do you know what I mean? If that's what we're talking about now, and obviously, I don't know if I'm right or not, but it just seems to give it a bigger mouth. It's going to feed more. It's going to grow more.
You see, that to me, Lee, so if I can put in, is more of a preference. because you will get all different face shapes.
Yeah.
But ultimately, you've got to look for those characteristics of the width, the length, and obviously the width of the mouth as well. But you get them ones where we can see it's going to possibly form with the round, chubbier cheeks and stuff like that. That's all different. Some lineages do consistently produce those characteristics, and others, you get certain face shapes that a lineage will throw up.
So, what about then? Another comment from Alan here. If the peduncle is reasonably thick, but the distance between the back of the dorsal to the tail is short, how are you seeing that?
Well, over time, that will become a less long fish, so to speak, rather than short and stumpy. So characteristics in that on Deutz fish, you tend to have that sort of characteristic anyway. From some, again, Rick, correct me if I'm wrong, but that's my understanding of it. Really, when you're selecting out your Toesai, you're not just looking for one aspect. So big mouth, big head, wide eyes, high backbone. You're looking at the whole fish, and you are breaking it down and like that. But that's just for processing the information. So, if the fish looks out of shape with regards to proportion in length, and you've got a short tail stock, then, it's going to turn into a tamasaba, basically.
The big thing you've got to watch.
The best tamasabas ever.
Big thing you've got to watch in that area is a lot of people mistake when the power of a peduncle is actually right and wrong.
Right.
I can't remember. I'm sure I've shown one of you guys this. I'm not sure, but this happens a lot in Toesai, Shiro, Sori from Makawa. So in a Toesai, obviously, what we want in an adult fish is that big, thick, strong peduncle with height and depth to it. But that needs to come with time. What you need, and this is what I spoke about, in that area, you still need to have this taper on the body. So, from kind of behind the head, it's a slow, gradual taper into the peduncle where you don't really get any nips or bulges. There's a nice bit of thickness there, but you don't want it to be too thick, because that's when that starts growing out, that's when it can look mighty stupid. And you see them when it's really pronounced when it's young. You can't scale a peduncle down from an 80 centimeter fish and have it look at the same 18 centimeters. That there is a fish that will grow short bodied. Perfectly. Perfect. You look at the head. I mean, you can see there the mouth on that fish, superb. And then you've got that length down to the dorsal from behind the head, and then that nice gradual taper. I mean, that peduncle is perfect for the size that fish was. What was it, Lee? Just over 20.
Yeah.
For the size that fish was, it's absolutely perfect.
21 cm. So
Yeah.
I've got some more. I got my shearer as well. It's not a very good.
No, but you can see the exact same setup.
The body on this thing now is insane.
Yeah. You've got to remember, that flesh gets bigger, and that's where your volume comes from over time. So every part of that fish is going to get fatter, basically. Yeah. It down, and that's when, if there's already too much there when it's young, you're screwed when it gets bigger.
Yeah.
Slightly different body shape. I think the peduncle is a bit bigger on that. Maybe it's just the angle they've taken the picture, but it's Danica. So it's probably been on Photoshop.
I'm going to share some other bit where this really pisses me off with Danica. They fuck about with all those pictures.
Yeah, exactly.
That's why I never look when I'm looking at them auctions. It's always on the video, because they put in them. They alter them to the vision in their head of what they want them to look like. And that's mainly, it's an enhancement around the peduncle.
Yeah, and I tell you what, right? Chasing the Toesai dream, never chase the Toesai picture off a Danica certificate, because it is bollocks.
Interesting. I've actually seen through pond windows with, we're talking about the tail tube, the sheer drop off from the actual height of it as well. And Chris had shown me a Kawa Shiro, and I asked him why he didn't think it were going to grow, and he kind of held the fish horizontally and showed me the actual height of the tail. it's hard to view a koi from above and see that, but you know when you see it horizontally, it's definitely that's a bit of a game changer if we're talking about
See,
growth.
this is another one. Talking about body and all that. Belly line is then yet another one to throw in, because everything we talk about is like your top view kind of stuff where you're looking, but then it's got to work out right underneath, because that is part of the structure. If the belly line isn't right, again we're in trouble, especially with female fish. You don't get a second chance with this, and that's where we end up with these cricket bat type koi, is when the belly line's not right.
Right. I've got a question for you, Rick. Right.
Go on.
So I was living the Toesai dream. I got told to buy a Toesai from Japan, and it was lovely. Right. I'm not going to tell me who told me to buy it, but I bought the Toesai from Japan. It's come over. It's lovely. Right.
Yeah.
But the gill plates are quite saggy on it. Looks like an old welly boot. Will the koi grow into that eventually, or is that just a mutation and I may as well kick it into touch? Because from above, the fish is mint, but it's just through the pond window, you can see the gill plates actually touch the actual dorsal fins, you know?
The peck fins.
Is
The peck fins, sorry, yeah.
Do I know this fish?
Yeah, well, from Saito.
Fair play.
You know the Kawaku that your brother sold me from Saito. It's a beautiful fish.
All right. No, we don't then. So I've not seen it. I can't quite grasp where you're at with what you're saying, buddy. So
yeah, no, it's a lovely. So when Ryan was over there with you, he suggested, he goes, "Look at this, mate. Nice for the show scene." And it is a lovely fish. You know, from the top view, pattern, body, everything's lovely, right?
Yeah.
But it's from in the rear window. You wouldn't notice it in a bowl. Maybe if you're a judge, you'd probably clock it. Do you know what I mean? At this stage in its life, but it's got quite large. You know, like the gill plates actually protrude from the bottom of the fish. You must have seen that before.
Yeah,
do they grow into those eventually?
Do they curl?
Which as in curl? Which way?
When the gill plates kind of curl out a little bit, that can be.
No. They seated quite nice, but they're low down here.
Oh yeah, give it time.
Yeah, that's why I don't
thing
want to
that
get rid of it.
Pond Windows have done, isn't it? They've changed all these viewing angles and stuff.
Yeah. It's just curious because again, you know, it's the Toesai dream. I think it's hard to find unless you've got a proper keen eye. These tiny little deformities from fish, especially with a pattern. You know, like when you've got like a funky little head pattern or a memoir and a koi, that can really disguise one eye being it's quite difficult sometimes, isn't it? You know, you've got to be quite keen to spot stuff like that.
And something you learn, but again, that only comes from experience.
Time. Yeah,
that's why when I feel like people get themselves trapped in a situation where they're not being exposed to enough fish, i.e., you know, buying that one a year rather than buying little batches and raising them. That's when you're not gaining that experience, which will help you in those more valuable purchases that you will inevitably still make. There's a really big balance to it. So, Joe, I'm just going to butt in before you say out because Alan's questions are making me a bit sleepy. I'm not going to lie. Lee, just coming back to what I mentioned earlier about having this, you know, self-sustaining idea of raising fish, learning from them, the Toesai dream. Obviously, you've done this. So how's it worked out for you, and how's it sitting in the hobby?
So obviously, for me, it's not a business, so I'm not interested in making any kind of profit. If I do make some sort of profit, I buy stickers and give them away to people and all that kind of stuff, first of all. So with my grow on, what I decided to do this year, like in December, was to buy 15 Sakai, Danica, and Momotaro Toesai. Okay, they're all slightly different priced, but they were all from good stock. Do you know what I mean? And on average, they cost me about 100 quid each. So at one point, when I had my 45 fish in my grow on pond, it's mad how it catches you up. Right? I had 4.5 grand's worth of fish in there, right? Which was a bit like, shit the bed, where do they come from? Do you mean? Because like 4.5 grand is 4.5 grand, you know what I mean? So what I've done is obviously I've monitored those. I bought a bag of sake. We've been keeping those on heat. I've done that. And slowly I've had Nigel, the koi judge, come over, Crafty come down, your brother come down, sifting through what I should keep and what I shouldn't keep. So I got a really good friend called Rob who was just set up a QT himself. And I said, listen, Rob, I got about 25, 30 fish I want to get rid of because they were growing so rapidly. By the time I asked Rob to come and offload some, they were about 30 cm, some of them. Do you know what I mean? So it massively was like putting the system under pressure. So what I did is I offloaded a load of even the worst fish in that batch was a good fish, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
But I just kept the best 12 from different people's opinion, chasing the Toesai Dream. So I loaded those to Rob for what I paid for them. So I've just recouped my money for those. And then what I've got now is I've got 12 koi left in my main pond because they were still sitting at, they're both sitting at 24 degrees. I thought I may as well just put them in the main pond just to save some money on the electric there. So ultimately, there's probably 1 or 2 kawaku that I'm going to keep there. The rest, what I'll probably do is offload those for a little bit more because they're worth a lot more.
Yeah.
Just to recoup the price from the heating and the food. So effectively, I would have chased the Toesai Dream, buying 45 of the best I could find and keeping 1. That's a massive learning curve. And if anyone can do that, I totally suggest do it because you're providing amazing fish for other hobbyists, which is keeping the spark alive in them. And also I'm chasing that one and learning loads from it.
Yeah, but ultimately, it's probably going to end up being cost neutral at the end of it.
Yeah. So I'll end up with 1 fish that has cost me nothing. Granted, it's only 100 quid.
But realistically, that one fish, I mean, I've seen the standard of some of them. That one fish could be a fish that you go out and cost you a couple of grand in a shop.
I think ultimately, but as in out of my wallet, it's only cost me 100 quid. But some of the toes I've got there now, I wouldn't like to think how much someone in a shop would probably sell them for because they are top fish, like you know, and they're all between like 28 and I think some of them are about 36 cm now.
Yeah.
Cool.
Good. Where's it at in the shop, Crafty? I mean, I'm guessing obviously I'm not you. What's people still buying a lot of these Toesai? What's the kind of behaviours?
Well, you have different behaviours really based on what it is they're looking for in the hobby. The people that aren't just selecting a fish for the sake of I like that when it's pretty. You get those guys coming down and picking your fish apart. And when I say picking your fish apart, I mean they want bowling them up and then they select through and then they end up with 3 out of a selection that they want. The guys that are chasing a dream, so to speak. They're constantly looking.
Rephrase the question a bit. Do you have anybody come in and buy like a bulk batch of something?
Oh yeah. I often, unbeknownst to me, man, it totally blows my mind. I've had a few emails where people say, right, I'm looking for these sort of fish. Can you bowl all these up and like send them to me? And I'm like, well, what are you looking for? And it's like, I want your best fish. You select them. This is the budget. And it's, you often get, what did we have on Saturday? I think we had somebody bag up 20 fish on Saturday, just to go home and learn from them. So, there are people out there doing it. And of course, if you do buy in bulk, then obviously I'd shave the price off on that a little bit as well, just to help them out. But
exactly. That's how I achieved the cost effectiveness, getting bulks from different places. So, Sorry, Craft.
Back to you, Joe.
Yeah, I think it's something I really want to do, to be honest. I mean, I think even because at the minute I don't have a quarantine tank either as well, and that's caused, I think, a bit of havoc this year as well. So there's another additional benefit of running a second system. But yeah, to be honest, I think also with the price of shipping on Nisai as well, like for 50 odd centimeters, if you're buying from Japan, the shipping alone, how many Toesai could you get with that? You're probably talking a decent chunk of Toesai there. So, like Lee says, if you go to a dealer and you're wanting to buy 30 fish and they offer you a discount because you buy in so many at a time as well, there's so many benefits I could see from it. But the big one is probably, what you learn from it as well. How they do in your water. For someone like me, I'd love to do it with a Sagi. because you'd just see all these different traits that I'd throw up, and maybe get 10 from Otsuka, 10 from Oya, 10 from Yagenji. Like, that's my kind of Toesai dream, I guess, to just see all these different traits and see how they just do in my crappy water, to be honest. And Ricky can show me up and grow them 10 centimeters bigger with these foam shower filters and whatever. But no,
I think it's more feeding
I
regime, Joe. That's
Yeah.
more feeding regime. When I was at the farm on Friday, man, I have never heard so many feeders going off. Every couple of minutes, there was one throwing a kilogram of sake into the ponds, man.
That's no joke. While we're on that, but the secrets to doing it, I've discussed time and time again. They're not really secrets anymore. The real art is in the feeding. If anyone's seen that, I'm not sure where we're at on the issues with the magazine, but the interviews with Nogami and Marido, they talk about raising fish. The first thing they mention is food. Food. You've got to learn how to do it. Honestly, you learn how to do that bit properly. Obviously, you've got to have the environment. The temperature is a big part. Temperature, the food. After that, you've just got to learn to be able to adapt the environment to cope with the food that you need to get the job done. You learn that bit. You're away, and then
I'll pick the top of his bottle off.
Yeah, so I think it's just like we've said. I think I think people can get drawn into it as well, and I guess some people might perceive the Toesai dream as buying a Dainichi, $4,500 Toesai or whatever. That's obviously not the view of all of us sat here today. But Ricky, have you come across people like that expect to get fish for a lot of money and then
honestly, right, the circumstances do not change. I mean, bearing in mind, right, from the get-go, so 20 odd years ago now when I started, it was all my obsession was in growing fish, always was. And I set out, people often ask me where I got that information from about breeder X, Y, or Z breeder. It's all from first-hand experience. I'm having them in Japan, most of the time having them over here. It's learning it all. So all that raising experience, all that sat behind me of doing this in mud ponds, every different environment is all there. I still get blindsided with Toesai. Breeders get blindsided. And the story I'm going to tell you, I actually wrote this down. I was once in Japan with a dealer and his private client, and he wanted an NND Sankey to grow in the mud pond. Now, all that said, one farm I have the most experience with is NND, especially the Sankey as well. So we selected a Toesai, and Makoto really picked some top draw fish. And I think the one we settled on, to my mind and his mind as the breeder, I mean, we were so excited. We're just like, yeah, this is phenomenal. Everything I knew and would look for was all there, including the Benny. It was just impeccable. Super big size Toesai as well, which reduces the risk. Because when you sat 35, 40 cm as a Toesai, it's very different to 115 to 20 cm. And went off into mud pond. I mean, this, I can't remember. I think somewhere in the region of $4 to $5 this fish, possibly a bit more as a Toesai. Had a female guarantee, which obviously helps should that bit happen. But this went into the mud pond. It came out and it was a pile of shite. The Benny, and there was not a single scale of Benny left on it. Not one bit. And none of us saw it coming. Makoto's got his head in his hands, just wondering what, heck's gone off. Blindsided. So that just happens. You can't account for, especially like Lee's mud pond Sankey showed you. I mean, to get that kind of result, those fish go from like 20 cm to 45 cm in 6 months. In fact, it's most of the time, it's kind of 5 months. And they're doing it in a mud pond. And although that environment, it's great in a lot of ways, they're doing it in a realm where, there's not a massive amount of UV penetration in there, which can, soften the color up a lot. And that explosive growth, it literally can just pull the color to pieces at times. But then there's other elements we throw in as well. Heat stress. I've got a few pretty prestigious fish going through this at the minute, because with this weather, I've got water at 31 degrees. And so there's some Benny that's really starting to say, I don't like this. And I'm having to take, countermeasures for it. I've actually ordered some bamboo screening now that I'm going to start shading like 30% of the pond that they can get under and out of the way, because I see the fish doing it. They're trying to hide under any little area, the little gap where the shower sits over the pond. They're spending all the time under there because they want to get out of it. They know it's not good for them, and it's not good for the colour. So,
well,
yeah.
Let me give you a really awkward question then. If someone offered to build you, 8 mud ponds instead of your concrete ponds, but you couldn't see any of your Toesai. So, example like the Takano event fish, you had, I think, what was it, 10 weeks growing them? Would you have preferred to have them in a mud pond, or would you have preferred to be able to see them and grow them on in the tank that they were in?
Concrete pond every time.
Yeah.
The bit people don't get with the breeders, they're doing this through necessity, because the fish houses they build are massively they're not massive, not over engineered for the country. They have to deal with a huge amount of snow. So these structures they build are built in that way to handle the snow. No other reason. That's why they're doing it. But these fish houses cost some serious money to put up.
Yeah.
So indoor pond space is really at a premium. Mud ponds, they get it dug, it lasts forever. They're outside. It's easy. It's more convenient for them. But yeah, concrete every time. And again, if reading those articles in the magazine, those two guys, I asked the question about mud pond versus concrete, and every time they go concrete for raising. And the reason why, they can see the fish. Why is it important to see the fish? You'll see how all this links together, because it's easier to monitor the feeding and adjust the feeding when stuff starts going wrong. Because to get those results, we're on such a fine line, it's easy to overstep it. And we have to, in a concrete pond, we can see that happening quicker and we can deal with it quicker. How do you change the environment when it holds, hundreds of thousands of gallons of water? Not easily. And you can't see what's going on. So,
and then Lee,
these two guys, the same questions. Would you have a mud pond if you could, as a hobbyist?
You go first, Craft.
No, I wouldn't, mate, to be honest. I'd love a lake, just to sit by and go fishing, but for the hobby, no.
We're not all as well.
I'd love a mud pond. I'd love a mud pond just to go skinny dipping in. And if there's koi in there, it's just a bonus.
Lee, would you change your Toesai system next year? What's your system at the minute? What is it? If you want to tell people.
Oh, my system at the minute, it is going to change. So it was lovely. It was working off a shower with about 40 kilograms of pumice stone or something, and I had an easy pod, and it was about 500 gallon. I'm going to change it now. That's all empty now, so that's going to be changed. I'm going to make it's going to be 750 gallons, I think, but then I'm going to put my compact L on there with a Momotaro Baki shower, just up the filtration so I can absolutely hammer more food, because I found that the Easy Pod and the shower couldn't quite keep up with the amount of food I wanted to plow in there. I was putting decent food in there because I was having amazing results, but I've got a spare drum. I sound posh now, don't I? I've got a spare drum, so I want to plug it in. That's it. So, but yeah, I'm looking forward to doing that. Just got to finish a motorcycle this year. That's all.
And then Crafty, I guess. Do you have an ideal system in mind? Is it something you'd even do?
Yeah, I would. I did have plans, but as my career changed, it changed my plans, to be fair, because I can do what I want to do, and I've got plans in the future for achieving stuff down at the shop. So, yeah, I'd love to take 200 Toesai and try me out at what Rick does, just to see how bloody difficult it is. I mean, we've just had a bloody big shipment of Momotaro Kahaku in, and well, they're big. I'd love to see what would have happened if Rick got hold of them and then put them through a growing challenge, to be fair, because I think they would have done better than the secret Sankis that he produced. So yeah,
you've got to remember there's some serious genetics in them, Crafty.
I know that, mate. It just would have.
Weren't we?
Yeah.
I think they've not had a great presence in the UK over recent years. I think it's so freaking hard to get fish there, especially stuff that people can afford.
Yeah.
And I mean, these guys are the original. They've kind of they kind of fell behind Sakai and Dainichi in recent years, but I mean, these are the original guys that they created this jumbo obsession. You know, they were creating these big fish at scale before anybody else, really. They really did mix it up, and they've gone and managed to do it across all 3 Go Sankey varieties as well. It's pretty impressive. But yeah, the Kohaku is a serious line there. It's the kind of things where you see the impact of that genetics. When you get a fish like this, even in an unheated pond, you've got it in there, you chuck a bit of decent food at it, and you're just like, holy shit, what's happening?
Yeah.
Well, you know the Toesai dream that we were talking about? I bought 45 Toesai, 15 Momotaro, Sakai, and 15 Dainichi. Keith Holmes gave me, can you remember the Kohaku he gave me with that mad pattern? I sent a picture on the group chat, the one with the crazy pattern.
Is that the one you sent today, Lee? Was it that one?
That thing is so big compared to the rest. Okay, yes, it was 10 mil bigger than the biggest one probably in that one batch. It's insane, the growth on that Momotaro Kohaku. Do you know what I mean? It's like really impressive. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Amazing.
The pattern's crap on it, but the body's good.
And that's what I'd say, you know, if you can get, with this whole Toesai thing, if you can get the fish from the top bloodlines and top breeders, like you've done with this, Lee, your results are just going to be, because when you then produce something, you know, these genetics, that they're in there, you know, that any type of Dainichi, it's in there in most of them. Yeah, the big differential in a lot of this is the pattern. But what you've got to remember, the likes of Dainichi, what they select and put out at the first release, normally in September, October time, there's fish in there that will be potentially better than the Tatigoi of a low to mid-end breeder, small scale. And it's just, again, it comes back to the numbers game. The heritage of the Dainichi line, the parents there understanding, but the volume of fish that they output from those sports are incredible.
So the interesting thing about going back to the Momotaro Kohaku that I've got, when we went down to Koi Waterbarn, because Crafty was there, can you remember we sifted through the Sakai they had there? They had like thousands, just a big batch of Sakai. We went through those. But the Momotaro ones, they had like 2 ponds. They had like different quality Toesai. So one pond was just like a batch of Momotaro. The other pond was selected by Momotaro, and then the one that actually Keith Holmes gave me was like, I can't remember what he said, but it was actually an individually selected fish by Momotaro himself for its, its potential. And I can't remember, it was a stupid price, but Keith just went, oh, you can have it. I was like, oh, cheers, mate. So I can never get rid of that, because that's a bit of Keith swimming in my pond, But I'm not quite sure what he was on about that individual fish, because that was the biggest Toesai in the pond, wasn't it? Remember?
Yeah, it was a lot bigger.
Yeah, so I'm not quite sure what the selection process was there with the different qualities or the different grades of Kohaku. But the Momotaro seemed to be, on the whole, a lot better than the Sakai. That was just our opinion on the day. So I don't know what kind of grade the Sakai were, but
I can I can shed a bit, because I've had 2 batches of Sakai this year, or 3 if we include the Dragon Ball, but like general big batches. I had one early doors, which was like 1,000 fish, I think, and then one that I got sucker punched into after, which was 1,050. The difference was night and day, but obviously the price difference was night and day. The second batch was over double per fish. As a batch of fish, it was just insane numbers. And that's another thing in getting these, the breeders don't just sell them by the box. These big farms, everyone's pond buying, and it's the only way to get it. But that aside, of course, there's always different qualities and grades coming to market from breeders. But there was a huge, but the biggest difference, in all honesty, was the quality of the patterns. Because, this other, but there was the first batch, there was plenty of really great fish come out of it. They just lacked in pattern, as opposed to batch 2, which, I mean, I've got 130 left now, and there's going to be some truly exceptional fish. Even there, I've just said that there's 130 left out of 1,050 already.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, some of the Sakai stuff is absolutely banging as well. Like yeah, but I've been really impressed with the Dainichi Kahaku, to be honest. Like, I think when I joined, they were about 20 centimeters, and they must be pushing like 38 now or something. Ricky now, some of them.
We were actually again going through that yesterday because I had to get some very. I had to take the yellow monkeys out of the pond. Those things were taking the piss at this point. Yeah.
So that was
don't wind me up, Lee.
That was 47 cm when I got it 6 weeks
Yeah.
ago. I guess
So your
now.
batch
So
for this, how aggressive are they at feeding time?
I measured it just now. I guess how big it is now. So it was 43 years 6 weeks ago.
Yeah.
51.
I wish. So it's 47 cm now.
Okay.
Very
Whether
good.
Kev's measured it wrong or whatever, but it's 47 cm now.
That's like nearly a centimeter a week, 4 centimeters in 6 weeks.
Yeah,
it just feeds.
Carry on like that, it'd be a meter in a year.
Yeah, it's mad. It's class. But I don't know. Like it says on this one now that the birthday is 2021. So we're talking about. I was listening to one of your podcasts earlier on about the growing seasons: Toesai, Nisai, Yonsai. So that's probably actually for the age. That's probably not excessive, isn't it? I'm probably behind maybe 12 months, but unless there's a typo on that, I don't know.
That one was last. No, go on. Yeah, Toesai 2021. So it's Nisai. Yeah. I've confused myself with that. That's now Nisai going Sanzai. So Aki Sansai.
Okay, so we are still good for getting it mass width.
I think from that batch that's from. But yeah, then things are wild. So anyway, the Dainichi Kohaku, I had them. So they were 35 to 40 cm yesterday, but the jump in body since the prior selection has been mental as well. So we can't forget that bit. But the whole point of that, was to get those pigs out of there to make sure they don't steal that extra centimetre or two I want on the Dainichi fish. Crazy.
That kind of bleeds
big, mate. Them yellow monkey, mate, were big in that pond. So when I was at there Friday, you showed me that when the guy went on your auction.
Oh yeah.
And honest to God, man, whoever's got that has got a fish.
So that I measured that about a week. I thought I did a YouTube. It might have been a week, 2 weeks ago. It was 38 cm. It's now at 40 as of yesterday. It was 32 cm when the guy bought it. Just absolutely bonkers. But
the body is mint.
Yeah, growing disproportionately. So two of them. I've actually put two of them now. Here we go.
Yeah, you want to start listening to me. You learn one day by your mistakes.
I've actually put the two biggest ones in with my Dainichi Nisai that are growing through to Sanzai because I don't feel like there'll be any. In fact, that'll probably still end up being a problem because they'll probably still be the dominant force in there. It's mental, but as you know, Crafty as well, you've got a Nisai on your way tomorrow, which I'm going to be sad to see depart. But
I'm so excited, mate.
62 cm as a Nisai. These things are just phenomenal.
You beat the dealer there, didn't you?
Nah, he paid the dealer for that one.
I did, mate, but I tell you, I had to hit his hand with an hammer a few times to let it go.
It's all tax deductible.
Yeah, it's all tax deductible, of course it is.
So, guys, would you if we're chasing the Toesai dream now, would you ever consider mixing? That's a question leading into this from that discussion about yellow monkeys. Would you mix varieties if you were doing it?
First.
Yeah,
Crafty, you go.
I would personally because I wouldn't just get one of each type, but I generally would get 3 or 4 of a variety if I was buying on a batch. Because I'm not necessarily chasing the one fish. But what I'd be doing from that is having the ability to learn from multiple varieties and multiple breeders as well. You know, even if you got 3 or 4 fish, you're still going to see good enough variables to be able to have an understanding of what's happening across the different range that you get. So personally, to answer the question directly, yes, and I don't think it's a bad shout, unless you know you just want to hone your skills in or your knowledge on one particular type. You know, then there's nothing wrong with doing like what Lee done, not even on the scale Lee done, you know, down to 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 fish, if your wallet could afford it. But you can still achieve the same sort of thing as what Lee did on a smaller scale. You know, it's not, you don't have to buy 45 fish, you can buy, you know, 10 fish, you know.
Lee, have you got any plans for next year, and what varieties? And
I have, but mixing varieties, I don't know if that would work properly, because I'm quite scientific in how I kind of approach things. And I've seen with the Karashigai and the Kawaku in Rick's Pond, they don't mix. It's like putting a Ferrari and a Ford Cortina, because they weigh the same in a race. They totally different speeds in growth and all that kind of stuff. So with the Gosanki, I will grow a load of Gosanki together as Toesai, maybe Shiro and Head series. However, the food then will be awkward because of the color. And then, do you know what I mean? Like with I couldn't use color food on the Head series or pure white on the Shiros. So I think you have to really pick your varieties that are going to mix together, will have the similar kind of growth rate, and also the same sort of like food needs as well. Do you know what I mean? Just for colors of different varieties and stuff, you know.
But that's just Coil Cell YouTube channel, Lee.
Pardon?
You've been watching the Coil Cell YouTube channel.
Yeah, a little bit. But do you know what I mean? Obviously, I don't think certain varieties, like you know, Shisuis is going to struggle if I get 5 Shisuis and put them in with like 20 Gosankis. It's going to be a false sort of sense of what's going on, I think. Do you know what I mean?
But it depends what you want out the end of it. It's what the end game.
Yeah, if you just want a lovely Shisui and a lovely couple of Gosanki, that's fine. But if you want to see what happens solely to like a batch of similar fish, I think you need like a more scientific approach to it.
I'll give you my take, and this is coming from, because this is important, the perspective of commercially doing this and trying to obviously max out every centimetre of volume that we can. And yeah, Lee's right, you know, separation is the biggest thing. I do realise, however, those hobbyists, you know, you've not got that massive ponds I've got behind me and any breeders have in order to create that separation to get that result. So ultimately, if you know what's going to happen, you can understand and get around it a bit more. But I think, yeah, to get the most out and learn the most, and you're doing it batches per year, I would try and stick to certain groups. And you've got the things you've got to consider, and these are the biggest ones, is size differential. Even amongst Toesai batches, a 5 centimetre size differential can be a lot. You know, that's really, really pushing it. It's probably the most I'd keep it in. Over that, you're going to have a problem, and it's going to restrict some fish in that pond, especially when they're batched out, because you get a dominant group, and that dominant group become very restrictive to the other ones in the pond. I was first introduced to this back in, I'm going to say 2006. That's it. I'd have been 16. So when I was working in Japan, this was all the stuff that really opened my eyes. You know, instantly we're in a mud pond, and we're doing a selection, and we've got a separate net for the fish that were a good chunk bigger than everything else. And that net, the reason was they believed, you know, it's possibly not even 10% of the population. You might even be talking 5% or less. But to the breeder, that was enough for them at that stage. You know, that small percentage of fish could mess up the growth of all the others. So they were removed to go and put something of a similar size in a different pond. Then I look around and obviously see all the age separation. Toesai completely separated, never put with Nisai. And then even there, the size differential, groups of fish put together within kind of, 5 centimeters of each other from smallest to biggest. Then on top of that, we've got variety separation, because, you've got so many different feeding behaviors and growth patterns amongst different varieties. You know, we've seen what Chagoi are like. You can bring yellow monkeys into that. Obviously, it's Ginrin Karashi Goi, they share Chagoi blood. You know, straight away there, these are fish that are dominant forces that will just sit on the top. They're not phased by somebody banging and clanging around a pond. They will just sit there gulping in food. Then if we naturally look at the behavior of Kohaku and Sankey, they're quite a skitty feeder. They'll come up to the top quite cautiously, take a few pellets, and they'll be gone. Then they'll slowly build that confidence up and come back, and they'll be gone. In the meantime of that process happening, you've got that Chagoi in there, and they're just sat at the top, food, while this Kohaku has just done this, and that's doing that. You can see how that's naturally going to mess things up in that environment. And then you flip it even more over to, well, like Lee said, then diet. You know, what's the requirements of the fish? If we've got Shirotsori in a pond with Hiotsori, then just as one example, yeah, the Hiotsori, to make them look how mine looked. I don't let that go past. Retford again. Lovely. Yeah, so the Hiotsori need colour food in order to make that happen. In fact, most varieties that have Benny need colour food to bring that development along in a timely manner. Shirotsori don't need colour food because if it's a lineage that genetically, you know, might be quite prone to secondary heat, you're going to force that out with colour food, you know, and you're gonna possibly create a tint in that white skin that's going to take time to get it out that you could have done just by avoiding it. So you split those groups up. Just when you go through that whole list, it's a crazy, crazy big amount. You know, when you're raising metallic fish, really, there's probably times of the year where metallic fish need a straight 100% colour food. Certainly now, for me, as I'm growing them, 100% colour food is needed, Deutz and metallic, because this heat is just trying to kill that colour off. So we've got to balance that up. So you can see how, and then, you know, that's going to sacrifice growth because we're not getting the growth diet into them. You can see there just from them few explanations when you're really trying to get the best out of every batch commercially, because we want to, because obviously for me, I want to get the best price for that stock that I raise. You've got to take in all these little variations into consideration, but very hard for a hobbyist to do because you do need multiple ponds to get that level of separation out of it.
Well, I think that's a good place for us to wrap up. I feel like I've learned something from that. So, win-win. No, I think
this is how I do staff training, jokes, and everybody gets to benefit from it.
Oh dear! I just want to do a pond at some point and just feed it insect meal. I think that'd be really interesting as well. To be fair, so I've said that.
Well, funny you should say that. So we've just had some pellet in from. I'm not going to say what the make is, but
Greg,
it's insect meal based. But before you guys go out there and actually put your hand on it to think, oh, that looks good, check the ingredients, because third ingredient on every single bag is chicken poultry meal. All right, and it carries quite a decent price tag as well. So, you know, my words are word of warning. Think about it.
So it's basically one maggot to a chicken nugget, all mixed up with a bit of spirulina. Lovely.
It's a rotten chicken nugget, mate. Maggot infested chicken nugget.
Oh yeah, could be. Yeah.
I'm sorry, I've got no. You've pushed the button there. I've got no time. People putting poultry meal in fish food, mate. Crafty, I hope you fucking kicked it off the shelf, mate, because it is just bang out of order.
Well, they've sort of tried to fluff it up a little bit by putting orange and broccoli flavored insect treats or something they call it. It's just mental, mate. It's like first thing I've done was flip it round to have a look what I've been sent in, and it's like no one's going to be buying.
Just to end on, Joe, it proper makes my piss boil. That, mate, shocking.
There you go, folks. So, episode 11. If you're watching this on YouTube after the matter, leave a comment. Let us know what you want us to discuss next week. And, we'll see you all again.
Magic. Cheers, folks.
Thank you very much.
Tiny beans.